Hey, what's up, Zach here, and today I've got the all-new Anta KT10, and thanks to Famuji Sneaker for sending me a pair of these to check out. If you want to check out a pair for yourself, I'll leave a link in the description below. Now, to save you the suspense right now, the KT10, for me at least, was awesome. These were just such fun shoes to play in. Everything about them was just nearly pitch perfect. Absolutely, just so much about them, does so many things so well. So let's start off in the uppers. Now, number one, you have a super beefy tongue in the uppers. It does have huge macro pores for breathing. However, underneath of it is actual padding, so it's not as breathable as you would think the tongue is, but we'll check that out in a second with the breathability test, because that was awesome too. Now, on the outer side of the uppers, you get this, it's TPU basically. It's like they say it's synthetic leather, but it almost feels like a mixture of TPU and nubuck. Really, really substantial, really, really comfortable, but just a very, very substantial protective feeling upper. And as you come down to that lace line, which is integrated, you don't get a runner's knot, but my heel slippage on these was none to mild at best, even before break-in, and even with a little bit more of the thin shoelaces that they have in them. Now, as you come down from that lace line, you do get nylon cabling going into the forefoot and then going into the rear foot. Almost looks like scratch marks going from both sides of the shoe. And then as you go into the rear foot, you do get a ridiculously thick and strong internal heel counter. But on the outside of that, you do get two fused external heel counters, which, number one, my knife had a really hard time getting through. This was one of the more difficult external heel counters I've had to get through. And just on court, it just feels incredibly stable, especially because that butts up right against the TPU medial bar and lateral bar that provides so much stability in the midsole, which we'll talk about in the midsole section. But just all in all, the construction of the uppers, there really was not a lot spared here. And you do get a decent amount of padding here in the ankle collar and heel counter. That's also what aids in the lockdown. The gusset on these is incredibly high. You look at these things on the breathability test though, and that's what really blew me away. Only heated up 97.2 degrees. And as you go into the forefoot, you can kind of see there is 3 layers. They're all woven mesh layers, so there's a lot of room for, heat and moisture to get out. Look at these things on the breathability mapping. You can kind of see it takes a second, but fog does start pouring out of the forefoot. And, like I said, with all that padding in the tongue, yeah, I mean, the macro channels are on the outside, but can't breathe that bad if it's only heating up 97.2 degrees, especially for the weight of the shoe. So in the uppers especially, just a lot of, really well constructed. Look at these things on the upper durability test, 10 seconds highest grit sandpaper. Burr barely makes an impression on it. You also get outsole rubber that comes up over that. So like I said, in terms of uppers in a shoe, they don't get much better. Now, getting into the midsole teardown, obviously we've seen the external TPU bars, but on the inside, it is just an entire bed of nitrogen-infused thermoplastic foam and a sandwiched carbon fiber shank, which does look like it sends leaflets into the forefoot and rear foot. Now, Anta a lot of times will do all kind of crazy stuff and put a lot of different foams in their shoes. They had the Smart Sam foam, things like that. But in these ones, it is a little bit more of a simple midsole, but it's incredibly effective. Look at this thing on the bounce height test. Got 43 centimeters in the forefoot, 45 in the forefoot. I mean, you really can't, you really can't argue with that. Plus, feeling on court, these just feel incredibly springy, incredibly bouncy. And yeah, all those accoutrements in the midsole, it's fun for me to look at. I love looking at it. I love talking about them. But in terms of just pure performance, honestly, this does the job well enough for sure. And heads up, in 2025, the 2025 basketball sheet is now going to be updated with all the broken down URS scores for every shoe, as well as if it's okay for orthotics or not for every shoe. So a little bit of an upgrade from the 2024 guide. You can once again sort it however you like. If you want to sort by midsole foam, by bounce height, by shank score, by speed ratio, by width, metatarsal width, or toe, whatever. That is going to be available in the description below, like I said, upgraded from the 2024 guide. All right, beginning into the outsole tread, this was really interesting. Now, number one, in the middle of the shoe, it's just some linear patterns. In the forefoot, you do get more of a radial pattern. It is rippled in the forefoot, really gentle radial rippled pattern. And then you do get some herringbone kind of in the rear foot of the shoe as well as in the very forefoot of the shoe. Now, it does have an incredibly strong lateral flange. It is made up of outsole rubber. It's also incredibly long, which we'll talk about in terms of stopping power. They're incredible. But look at these things on the grip test ramp. Initial grip, 44 degrees, pretty darn good. And they sound tacky. They feel tacky. You can just hear it. Yeah, I don't put a lot of stock in squeak or the sound because, a lot of shoes that don't make any sound do really well in terms of grip. But with these, it's not so much the screeching they make, but the sound of just peeling off of the ground. They do pick up dust though. However, I never wiped them down and they were still fine. Right? I mean, I'd look down at them and I'd say, oh, okay, like they're starting to look dirty. I'll see how they do, and it still grip just fine. On my dusty court here, or the more pristine, community center courts I play at, really had no problems with grip whatsoever. Like I said about stopping power a second ago, you look at these things on the speed ratio, coming in at 2.72, shank score of 0.4, because if it's a sandwich shank, I'm considering that a top-loaded shank now, just because they do just as well as a top-loaded shank versus a bottom-loaded. So a shank score of 0.4 brings that up to a 3.12. I think that's exactly where they belong. Yeah, they're not the lightest shoes on the planet, but they give so much back to you in terms of first step launch, in terms of north to south speed, right? Going coast to coast on a court, as well as short court speed. They're incredibly nimble shoes, more nimble than you think they're gonna be when you see the weight of them in the midsole teardown. And so in terms of speed, really no matter where you are, short court speed, trying to create space for yourself, coast to coast speed, really, they've got you covered no matter what. And looking at them on the outsole durability test, 10 seconds highest grit sandpaper, I didn't get a millimeter of damage on these, and the durometer is only 14.75. So a little bit softer rubber, but also a little more durable. Now remember, the rubber is pretty thin. It's not very wide rubber. So on outdoor courts, they're still gonna wear down, versus something with a little bit more chunky, aggressive rubber. You can play with them outdoors. I think if you've got more ballerina footwork, if you're a little more light on your feet, and sure, they're protective enough for outdoors. They breathe well enough for outdoors, but I'd say just, like I said, watch out for the thin tread. And getting into the fit of the KT10, a lot more forgiving than the KT9. These things have an in-flare of only 9 degrees, which is actually pretty mellow. Then they come in at 28.8 centimeters of length, 9.6 centimeters metatarsal width, 10.6 centimeters of toe box width, and a toe box taper of only 26 degrees. What I noticed is I still had cramping on my lateral side just because of the TPU bar, but I get cramping with these things on any shoe, right? If I'm just even close, I start to cramp when I start swelling because my feet swell a lot when I play. So I'd say a narrow and medium foot, you just go true to size on these things. If you're a really narrow foot and you're not inflared a lot, you're maybe a little more streamlined straight, probably go down a half size, get some weight reduction. Medium and 2E, I'd probably go true to size. On a 2E, if you're super inflared, you can go up a half size on these things. You're gonna get a little bit more weight in these. I was able to break them in. It took a while, but I'd say a 2E, 4E, I'd be going up a half size. A 4E, if you're long-toed, just go up one size on them, just because, like I said, that lateral bar is going to annoy you. And if you're somebody with a really kicked out, prominent styloid, Taylor's bunion, things like that, it's gonna be a little bit of a longer break-in no matter what. In terms of the snake bitten foot, really besides anything lumps, bumps on the outside of your foot, I don't really see a problem with these for anything. Shin splints, ankle sprainers especially, orthotics, braces, they do fantastic. Heel pain, ball of foot pain. Like I said, it's a simple midsole, but it does a really effective job. And the shank, because it's not top-loaded, because it kind of dives down, it only sends very small leaflets in there. You're not feeling that unforgiving carbon fiber underfoot, but it's also giving you a lot of the benefits of carbon fiber in terms of protecting the big toe joint. So really for anything you can throw at these things, like I said, besides Taylor's bunions and prominent styloids, should be just fine. And talking about the all-important playability, for sure, these were one of my most favorite shoes to play in. Number one, the stopping power with the lateral flange. Number two, how substantial they feel on foot, but how nimble they are. They really remind me of a mixture of the LeBron 22 and the Sabrina 2, just with more, thermoplastic, more, kind of lively, poppy foam underneath of it. They don't feel as heavy as they really are. The weight is, a lot of the weight's in the TPU bars. That's where I kind of felt the weight in these things. But they give so much back that you don't feel the weight in them, but you do feel the support of everything underneath of you. So it was a really fine line that they had to toe with this, and they just did it perfectly. So really, they're positionless shoes, right? I hear all these people saying, basketball is becoming more and more of a positionless sport. Well, put it this way, these are the shoes for that then, because they can do pretty much everything well. And these were just a supremely fun shoe to play in. I mean, they're just, like I said, super lively, nimble, but you also feel protected, right? You feel like you're not gonna just roll over to Kingdom Come. So I would just love to hear your thoughts in the comments down below, especially if you got the KT9, if you've been on the sidelines in the KT line, out of this world. So I'd love to hear your thoughts, like I said, in the comments down below. And if you do want to see what Anta's up to with the Kai 1 Speed, which is another shoe that I actually think is a really great shoe for outdoor courts, make sure you click into this video up above and subscribe down below. Respect rubber and foam. I'll see you somewhere in the Sneakerverse.